know where this came from. Microphone. Is this one his? This one's mine? All right. Things are a little different tonight, sorry. And for one thing, Carlos isn't here yet, but that's not unusual. He's late sometimes because he's busy. I'm Robert McBride, and am I towering over you? Wow. Robert McBride of All Classical Portland, and it is my honor and privilege and pleasure to be here and welcome you and chat with Carlos when he shows up. And Philip has given us these little things that say, I survived Mahler's third organ symphony. This started with the 5th, 10th, Mahler 10, that's right. Okay, and now we're at Mahler 3. So I brought out a couple of props just because I wanted to hold them up and remind you that all the information about next season's Organ Symphony spectacular stuff is available. So you should get these things before you leave tonight. Make plans for next year. There are some things I'm really looking forward to. It's going to be a wonderful, amazing season, as this season has been quite wonderful. Yay, yes! Hey, look who's here. Look what you got.
What did you get?
Someday,
Where is Philip? Hi, Philip.
Someday, Mahler 8.
Did somebody explain this?
Yeah, I was talking about, yeah. It started, I survived Mahler 3. It started with Mahler 10.
Then went to Mahler 6.
And 6, okay, yeah. So we're survivors. So, is there anybody, well, let me put it this way, how many people here have heard Mahler 3 in concert ever? Wow, more than I expected. Portland Youth Philharmonic did Mahler 3, wow. So anyway, this is Carlos Kalmar, music director of the Oregon Symphony.
Hi.
But you probably knew that. So I got to see Mahler 3 only once before. It was like 20 years ago or something at Tanglewood, Seiji Ozawa, Boston Symphony. And I was sitting in the shed with 6,000 other people. And seated next to me was, if you'll pardon the expression, a little old lady. I mean, she really was exactly that. She was very small and older than I am, and she was a lady, I assume. And about halfway through the piece, in a very quiet, beautiful passage, she suddenly reached down, picked up her handbag, put it on her lap, opened it up, rustled around noisily, pulled out a pencil, plain old garden variety wooden pencil, looked at it, put it back in, closed up her handbag, and set it back down. I don't know what she was thinking about, but it certainly wasn't Mahler 3 for that minute or two, and it made it difficult for me to think about Mahler 3 for that minute or two as well. So please don't do that tonight, okay? Especially since, see all these microphones? This one's being recorded for broadcast on, guess where? All Classical Portland, yay.
I actually never saw this symphony live.
Except when you've been conducting it
Well,
yourself.
that's different.
Yeah, that's different, that's true.
But I had one of my fondest, most deep musical memories has actually something to do with this, which is, I never saw this symphony live in a concert, but I saw a rehearsal for maybe 10 minutes. It was in the Golden Hall in Vienna, Musikverein. It was Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, Claudio Abbado. And I actually was in the other room rehearsing something. I was at that time still playing the violin. And I don't know whether you have ever seen this hall. This hall is a little bit, it's not strange, but it's a little bit different in the setup because it goes up quite high. And the Vienna Philharmonic, whenever they can, they put actually the basses in the back. Never mind, they didn't put the basses in the back. The back was empty of anybody. And then a person didn't walk out to sing the fourth movement. She didn't walk, she actually sailed. I talked to Susan Platz, our soloist, because she studied with Jesse Norman. And she said, yeah, that's true. Jesse doesn't walk. Jesse just... That was one thing, that all of a sudden there comes this absolutely majestic, and she made the impression of being very tall. And then, okay, they do this, and then she opens her mouth, and the entire room was, I was like, oh my God, what am I seeing? Jesse Norman. It was just pure gold, everything coming out of that woman. And I was like, oh my God.
Is that part of what inspired you to become a conductor?
No.
No. But
actually, in my recollection, because as you know, becoming a conductor in my case, I didn't ever think about becoming, but just playing a little bit with conducting. I was 17. That's quite a while ago. I don't remember everything. But in my recollection, it never had anything to do with a conductor. Meaning, oh, Karajan. Yes, I saw Karajan. And I was completely transfixed.
But it didn't make you want to be him?
No. Well, first of all, now maybe the gray hair, it's getting there. But I cannot conduct with my eyes closed, so I skipped that one.
So what did inspire you to be a conductor?
The way I describe it is there are people out there that are very nerdy, in the sense that already, look here, that at a certain age they love to tell other people what to do. In music. I was like, I remember to this day that I was barely 16 or 17. And of course, I was at a very special school in Vienna for music students, my high school. You are only admitted to that high school when you are actually a music student. So we all were, and one of my, not even classmates, but was a girl who actually studied with the viola player of the Alban Berg Quartet. Alban Berg Quartet was, of course, the gods of quartet, pretty much. And they played the A minor quartet by Schubert, and I heard it, and I absolutely insisted that all the tempi they take are wrong. And I thought, later I thought, what the hell do you actually know when you are 16? That way you become a conductor.
You're quite candid tonight with us. I like this. So what was your first Mahler conducting experience?
First.
The first symphony?
Yeah, that's actually normal. And I actually, thinking about what you're going to witness tonight, I thought it's so fascinating when conductors who had this wonderful blessing and honor of conducting, aside from number 8, every Mahler symphony, many of them many times, then you reflect upon what it actually meant back then when you started, what it means now. And I thought, well, back then, when a young conductor first touches Mahler, and it's very advisable, starts with number 1. Don't start anywhere else because it gets really tricky with every, one is the easiest, as if that would be easiest. And I thought, there are several wow moments in that. Because first of all, wow, because the sheer power that comes at you, you're like, oh, I like this job. And then also there is this wow moment, oh my goodness, this is a long piece. I didn't struggle so much with the length, because Mahler 50-some minutes. I mean, come on, that's for Mahler, that's short. And later you realize that Mahler has this, there are symphonies where when you think about them, you have this sort of, I mean, you always have this thought of absolute adoration. I have that, as you know, not only for Mahler. There are a couple of other composers where I'm like that. But that's the first. And then there is sometimes, in some Mahler symphonies, this feeling, and it's not a negative feeling of, oh boy. So, what I'm talking about, when you are about to conduct number 6, the tragic, it's, oh boy, because you know, it's so transforming and so tragic and so devastating that it's like, oh my Lord, how am I going to do this? When you, as I had the pleasure 4 weeks, maybe 5 ago, of conducting Mahler 9, it's, oh God, because it ends with absolute silence and death. That in a positive, it's a kind of positive death somehow. It's not like the 6. The 6 is like 9 is, and tonight it's something like that, because when you actually think about it, you think how on earth us, the, let's call it the intellectual driving force that a conductor has to be, how am I going to accomplish it that I can construct something like an arch over an hour and 40 minutes? Because that's how long this symphony is. Give or take. An hour.
No intermission?
No intermission.
No, we go straight through, hour 40 minutes.
Because the point is that you have, in later Mahler symphonies, you do the first movement, and then actually you are kind of exhausted. In this, the good thing about the 3, you are not emotionally exhausted. Number 9, you are emotionally exhausted, and you think like, oh boy, 3 more movements of this. Number 3, the point is that the first movement lasts as long as an entire symphony by Schumann, 33 to 36 minutes.
Just the introduction is 10.
Pretty much.
It's crazy.
But
it's also
the proportions, and then you think, okay, what am I doing now? And then you think, okay, now comes the flowers, and then come the animals, and that's
I like the birdies. It's got wonderful birdies, this symphony.
Yeah. And then everything gets so serious with this. Then things get really difficult. 4th movement is just hard because Mahler, intentionally, he doesn't help. Mahler always helps you. I know it's kind of boring because whoever has been here in Roberts in my pre-concert talks probably has heard me saying this. It's easier to conduct a Mahler symphony than a symphony by Haydn. It is easier. Been there, done that. Because Mahler has this wonderful thing, just do what is on the page, you're fine. He gave so many instructions, and movement 2 or 3, movement 1 to some extent works quite well because the power of what it does is enormous. Second, it works quite well when, like in this wonderful orchestra, you have a phenomenal principal trombone, Robert Taylor, whom you probably know from Pink Martini. Just watch what he does tonight. So that's fine. And then movement 2 and 3, you think, fine, it's a little Viennese minuet and da-da, and then the birds. The birds. And then you think, do I have a fantastic trumpet player who can play the post horn well? Well, we have Jeff Work, so no worries. And also the music is like that. It changes the mood, and it does this and that, and it has at times charm, and at times it has power, and at times it's quiet. And then comes movement number 4, and all of that is gone. It's very quiet, it's very slow, it's very static. So, nowhere to hide. I mean, you just have to breathe through this movement. Breathing is very important in music. And then the good news is then comes movement number 5, which is so happy, so a childlike happiness. And then comes the adagio, which is another mountain to climb, a positive one. Do you know, did you mention that actually Gustav Mahler, when he conceived this symphony, he actually had 7, not 6 movements, 7. And essentially this music that speaks so much about nature per se is not only, it's about all of it, including the journey into heaven. And yes, it ends in heaven, because the ending is heaven. But the funny thing is, Mahler had actually the idea of a 7th movement after the 6th, which is, in English, Life in Heaven, or something like that. Yeah?
Which is now the last movement of the 4th.
It's the last movement of the 4th symphony, because essentially he wanted to end this gargantuan symphony quietly. When I read that and got into that, I thought, well, maybe one day I will be very daring and be destroyed by the audience who doesn't want to sit through something like that, and by the critics who say, you're so wrong. What would happen if we play actually 7 movements? And I mean, I thought like, wow. Because the point is that this symphony starts on earth with the summer. Pan awakens. And it's 2 things at the same time. The sheer force of what comes at you is amazing, but also it's quite threatening and quite dark at times. It's like, oh my God, this nature is too much. And then we go into the meadows and look at flowers in the 2nd movement, and then we go and meet some animals. And in the middle of the animals comes this post horn.
Off stage. So it's far away.
And you think, and the post horn very clearly interrupts. It's an interruption of the music. And you think a little bit, why is it there? And there are no hints why Mahler's, at least I never encountered anything, why Mahler really wanted it there. But I thought about this in the following. Since the movement number 4 that comes after the birds and animals is about mankind, about us, maybe the post horn somehow is already a calling that calls for mankind to appear.
It's like it's the animals hearing this thing and going,
yeah, like, what's that?
Did you know there's a post horn across the street? The Picnic House restaurant across Salmon Street, they have all kinds of unusual things in there, including a post horn.
Nice.
Yeah, you can have this, you're sitting and having a drink, and you look over and there's a post horn on the table next to your sofa.
And then I take Philip's thing and said,
oh, yeah.
I survived Mahler 3.
We should talk about singers and words.
That's another one. Mahler had his thing that he was absolutely in love with this Knabenwunderhorn in English.
The youth's magic horn. So it's a
Yeah.
bunch of German folk poetry about some young boy who has a magic horn? Really? That's probably not what it's really about.
It's not meant literally.
Yeah, okay.
It's a collection of actually folk poetry that was collected and assembled by 2 phenomenal poets, Achim von Arnim and Clemens von Brentano. And Mahler drew a lot of that. So in his first symphonies, and have you ever thought that Mahler actually, in his music, writes 2 things only? He writes either the smallest form possible, songs, art songs, or the largest, excluding opera, of course. symphonies, nothing in between. No symphonic poems, no. And he loved this poetry, and this poetry has something very naive. And there are allusions in this symphony to that, actually. But when it comes that you hear Susan Platz, our wonderful soloist, singing, it's so, my goodness, if we want to go philosophical and deep in German poetry, you probably will end up with Nietzsche. Where you read the lines and think like, what? And that's how it, and he talks about mankind and, in a way, happiness in a very strange way. And that can only be understood when you look at it in conjunction with movement 5. Because then that is Knabenwunderhorn, and is the joy about, it's actually that we probably all know, one way or the other, the story of the Last Supper, which you can listen to and get into it in an extremely serious way, because whoever knows something about religious knows the meaning of the Last Supper and the giving of the body and the giving of the blood, etc., etc. And here, it is all about, we are at the Last Supper, it's so wonderful, and St. Peter, his sins are forgiven, and joy in heaven. That's it.
And a kid's choir going ding dong, ding dong. It's almost too cute.
It's very cute, actually. And it makes sense because then, after that, comes this wonderful adagio that takes you to heaven in the end. So
for Mahler, it's actually pretty happy overall.
Well, yeah, it is. This is probably his most positive work.
It's all downhill from here. Not really.
Number 4 has something that is very positive, but it gets a little more serious. And the thing with number 3 is that is very important for you to actually know, is that Mahler's intention actually was to write about everything. He met, years after the Symphony No. 3 was premiered, he met Jean Sibelius. And they two had a discussion about symphony and so on, and Sibelius, they actually disagreed, because Sibelius was structure, logic, form. And it's not that Mahler's symphony have no form. Oh, they are architectonically marvelous, but Mahler maintained that when you write a symphony, you have to pack the entire world into that. And you have to understand that literally. That's what he did. He actually talked about his own work and said, I have managed to write in the symphonies No. 1 and 2 everything about myself, Gustav Mahler. Every emotion, everything, it's there. And now let me go out and write about nature and its meaning. And he wrote about all of it. Matter of fact, one of the famous quotes of him was, he wrote the symphony in the summer month in Steinbach am Attersee, Steinbach on the Atter Lake, some 25 kilometers outside of Salzburg. Outside of Salzburg, heading east and slightly south, is a region in Austria that is full of mountains and lakes. It's to die for. So beautiful. And he had, Steinbach am Attersee, he had a little house, one room, right on the water, where he was quiet and he could write in amidst water and mountains. And later Bruno Walter came to visit, and he pretty much said, don't look at the mountains and the nature. I have already composed all of that. Just look at my music.
This is going to be a magnificent, uplifting experience for all of us. I'm so glad you're here. And when you leave, you can tell your friends to come on Monday night when there will be one more performance of Mahler 3 with all these people and this guy, Carlos Calmer.
Robert McBride.
You're good.